Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Hello and welcome to Reimagining Motion, a podcast from the High Volume Transport Applied Research Program, which is undertaking research into the complex and interrelated issues of sustainable transport across Africa and South Asia. The High Volume Transport Applied Research Program, HVT, is an £18 million investment by the UK Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO. I'm Holger Dulkman, your host for today's session. Welcome. Road transport is a predominant mode of transport in Africa, carrying at least 80% of the goods and around 90% passengers with all types of vehicles. And also, African countries have the lowest level of motorization in the world. This is changing rapidly with the growing economies and urbanization. And road crashes are disproportionately high in Africa compared to other regions of the world. It has the world's highest estimated road traffic fatality rate of 26.6 road deaths per 100,000 population, compared to a world average of 17.5 and 9.3 per 100,000 population in Europe, despite far lower rates of motorization. And worryingly, the number of people who died in traffic incidents in Africa rose by 70% in the last decade. In this episode of Reimagining Motion, we'll explore this road safety record with a focus on Kampala in Uganda, where there were nearly 5,000 road deaths in 2022. We'll not only consider the road safety aspect of growing motorization, but also what this means for efforts to reduce air pollutants and greenhouse gas emissions. I'm very delighted to be talking to Michael Wanyama, who is a Ugandan road safety activist, environmentalist, and automotive technician. He specializes in engine management systems and focuses on vehicular emission control and safety. Michael initiated an award-winning community-driven program dubbed AutoSafety Uganda, under which he leads a team of young professionals carrying out non-institutional research and development on safe, clean, and sustainable transportation systems for Africa. So welcome, Michael. Many thanks for joining us today. So how are you?
Thank you, Olga. I'm doing well.
So let's dive immediately into our podcast series today. Let's start by talking about road safety. From your work in Kampala, what are the main safety concerns for road users as well as those pedestrians? Why do you think Africa has this worrying road safety record, and why are fatalities increasing?
Thank you. I think issues to do with road safety in Africa varies from city to city. I've been around in a few cities within Africa, but considering Kampala, where I live, one of the major concerns has to do with infrastructure. Our roads are really bad, and the infrastructure right now is not inclusive. For instance, if I want to cycle through town, I wouldn't feel safe. Most of the road conditions in town are not favorable for walking and cycling. So basically, the good roads are slightly outside town. And then also you find that the congestion is more in town. Basically, the infrastructure and then the enforcement, we have very weak laws. You find that the rate at which the road traffic rules are being broken is at a high rate, and then sometimes you find that the people that are supposed to be enforcing the laws are the ones that are breaking them. So it is quite disheartening. So we have infrastructure issues, we have weak laws, the enforcement. So there's a lot of work to do when it comes to Kampala, when it comes to Uganda and Africa at large. So we just need the systems to improve for people to feel safe on the roads. So that's one of the major concerns. We find that many accidents, we wouldn't even call them accidents because these are human errors. Many crashes are happening, and you find that pedestrians are affected mainly because there has not been put a system that can account for all. You find that when you go to public hospitals, you find that majority of casualties are road traffic issues. It's like we need to go back to the drawing board and then figure out how can everyone be using the road safely, those that are disabled, those that are, the vulnerable people, the walkers, the cyclists, vehicles. So you find that it's quite a mess.
So thanks also for sharing that. And we will have another episode on our African series with Carly Gilbert-Patrick from UNAP, which described and focuses in particular on the issues of walking and cycling. And you mentioned the enforcement of traffic rules. We also have an importers of second-hand vehicles and also non-safe vehicles. What is also the role the vehicle part is playing from your perspective?
What the vehicle part is playing, I think it has to do, it's multidimensional. Because mostly we import second-hand vehicles. Actually, you find that about 90% of the vehicles that come into the country are second-hand, mostly coming from Asia, Japan, and some from Europe. But you find that the regulation around this is that we have a 15-year cap on the age of the vehicles that come into the country, and this only affects light vehicles. And then there is no really reasonable evidence on pre-shipment inspections. Some of them come when they already have problems. So when they come here, they are going to be subject to the poor road infrastructure. I already mentioned about the poor condition of roads. This has an effect on how safe these can be and the kind of emission that are come out of them. And then also you find that our local technical workforce, like specifically the mechanics, they don't have enough capacity, in terms of knowledge, in terms of the skills and tools to do proper maintenance on this. So you find that in a short span, these vehicles tend to be more dangerous to the environment and to the people's lives, more than they could be in exporting countries. And since we don't have an active program on inspections, the mandatory inspections, you find that if you tested most of the vehicles in the country, I don't think you would get even 30% that would pass the tests. We have about 2.3 million vehicles in the country, but most of them are in poor states. So you find that when they come used, they come with problems, and then they come here, run on poor roads, poorly maintained, and then the problems increase. But then we don't have much action on this. Since there is no follow-up on how these are operating, so there are so many data gaps. You find that when you check out on because the Uganda Traffic Police always publishes the annual reports on crimes, including road safety, and you find that mostly the blame is on the motorist because of the crashes. But when you look deeper into it, as a technician, we have seen how the poor maintenance has caused these vehicles to be unsafe. For instance, there's a small study we are doing besides the HVT program. We are looking at the safety, what could be constituting to the crashes beyond what is released in the reports. So, for instance, if a vehicle crashes, if it's running maybe within the speed limits, usually it's about 50 kilometers an hour, the report will not say that it's a mechanical issue. Even when they say it's a mechanical issue, they wouldn't tell where it came from. So these vehicles, we found that most of them are not having safety features working. So you find that the payload for this vehicle has exceeded the maximum, and again, the safety has reduced. It wasn't even able to do like if an accident or a crash happens. Those are the issues.
So one element is the second-hand vehicle import and the rules and regulations around that, and probably also the responsibility of the global north and the exporting countries. But at the same time, as you talked about, a lack of national responsibility on the lack of standards, the lack of inspections, and then also the role, which can talk later about, the role also of international support, and if it's going in the right direction, and also the need, obviously related also to your work, to really also have people actually dealing with improving also vehicles and in a way that they're more safe and less polluting. So 4 things I'd like to explore. First, on also the second-hand vehicle import. Second, on national regulations. Third, on, in fact, role of international. And fourth, on also your particular work. So let's start with the first one, on the second-hand vehicle import. So you already described the challenges around that. So what do you think needs to happen? And is there a responsibility also of the exporting countries as well?
I think one of the key things they need to revise is that looking at only the age of vehicles which is important, but then that alone cannot really fill the need to improve the situation. Because I'll compare two vehicles, one that was built, let's say, in the year 2000, that cannot come into the country. If it's been in the UK, let's say maybe China, Japan, where it's been running and well maintained, and then you compare it with a 2010 model. Right now, a 2010, 2008, 2009 onwards, those can come in. So if you compare it with maybe even the 2015 model that came in Uganda in 2015, you'll find that the older model of 2000 is much cleaner and safer. Reason being, it's been well maintained and the regulations are working. So just looking at the age means even cleaner vehicles that would come in are refused. But then you find that in some situations, the newer ones that are seemingly newer, they can come in with issues. So they need to look at other parameters, the mileage, also the service history. When you look at vehicle sites where they sell vehicles like locally here, but as agents from Japan and other countries, you find that there is little on the history of these vehicles. So what I would recommend is we need to sit and revise some of these, because even bad vehicles are coming in. At least one thing I would want really to emphasize is to look at the inspections. There needs to be inspection at the exit ports where the vehicle is coming from, and then when it comes here, it needs to be inspected. I think also the kind of the corruption in Africa also contributes to this. Usually, you find that we get substandard things. Actually, over 60% of the car parts and accessories on the local market are counterfeit, and these have a lot to do with the safety and emissions. So, enforcement is really something that they really need to work on.
Thanks for sharing that. So moving also to the national policy. So you mentioned inspections, you mentioned potentially some type of African safety or emission standards, like we also see in different parts of the world. You mentioned strengths to the capacity of the traffic police. Are these the key things?
Yeah, I think that's mostly it, because traffic police controls has to do a lot with the safety. Actually, it's the lead agency. It's we have the Ministry of Works and Transport, and then there's the Uganda National, the Road Safety Council. But traffic police does most of the work. And then you find that there are gaps. Like, for instance, we have cameras on the road. Some of these kind of systems or tools are not being utilized well. So we need more kind of effort in this. If traffic police has the capacity to do quick inspections and then take right decisions on, if that vehicle should stay on the road or not, if there are more inspections that can be done periodically, and then the kind of enforcement, you find that from the national, the policies that are being kind of enacted, or that are being that are into force, there are so many gaps. So you find that most of the efforts are, kind of in paper format. I think we need to look at maybe shifting, kind of setting up systems that are inclusive. Public transport. I've been to a few countries and been to Europe, and you find that you people there, you don't feel the pressure to own a vehicle because public transport is working. But down here, to feel that I'm safe on the road, I have to drive myself. If you're in a taxi, you're always worried, it can crash anytime. If you're riding a bike, you have fear, you can be, hit anytime. Space is very limited. We are building new roads, but these roads, you find that they are not inclusive for everyone. So there needs to be that system, whenever they design a new road, it has to be a standard that it is inclusive for everyone, And then you find that we are building roads that are more, our cities are being built, to accommodate more vehicles, and less of. So A bus that will take 60 people is not being given that chance to do that. And then these 60 people are going to drive themselves. And you find that the congestion. So we are kind of, it's like rolling an ice ball. The problem, we are making it bigger. So if there was good public transportation, then that pressure of people wanting to own cars, I think even the demand for used vehicles will reduce. So I think those are some of the issues that the government or the policies need to look at.
Thanks for sharing that. And we, in fact, also in our African series, we look into the role of informal transport, the role of potential BRT. We talked also to somebody also from Lamata. So it is a complex issue. And let's go also to your work. So your organization, AutoSafety Uganda, is doing a range of work to address safety as well as air pollution, as well as climate change, in fact. And in 2022, you won the ITF Decarbonization Transport Award. So congratulations also to that. And now you just recently also received support also through a T-Trend project funded by the High Volume Transport Program. So could you tell us a little bit more about your work you're doing also with your mechanics in Kampala and what you hope to achieve?
What we are doing, actually, there's plenty of what to do, but we are taking it bit by bit. I talked about the challenge of the poor maintenance of vehicles. There's a very big connection between the state or the mechanical condition of the vehicle and how safe it can be on the road, and then also the amount of emissions that are coming out of it. When you look at what is being done locally, some of the solutions are slow moving and others are way off. So this is where we found some sort of a low-hanging solution, like a low-hanging fruit to tackle this issue. And getting to win the ITF award for decarbonizing transport is because I think not many people are looking at this in the same way. We are so excited about the new mobility trends, including electric mobility, which is really good because a lot of emissions will be avoided. But again, it's like we are ignoring the elephant in the room. We have this problem of these huge vehicles that are highly emitting, and then since we don't have any policies on end of life for vehicles, so we are still stuck with them. By the time we transition to, let's say, electric mobility, there's more cycling and things are good, the damage that would have been done with this that we are using right now would be tremendous. Something, a very big burden to bear. So we are looking at how can we make what we already have run safer and cleaner while we look at the new trends that we need to adopt. So you find that most startups, everyone is talking about electric mobility, e-mobility. Yes, we want that too, but then we have a problem here. So what we are doing through the high volume transport grant, first of all, we are collecting emissions data, because since we don't have the inspections, we are trying to create more of a case for how much these vehicles emit while in Africa, in contrast to how they emit while in exporting countries. Now, when that is putting into account, all systems are working. On our end, we have a very serious vice of catalytic converter theft in vehicles. I think it's a worldwide issue. But when a vehicle like the cat converter is stolen, there's people have that, they have to replace them because they have to pass inspections to get the vehicle to be allowed to be on the road. But now, for our case, when it is stolen, it's not really a big concern. And then actually you even find that some people, they confuse the cat converters for silencers. We have seen young men that will take their vehicles to the garages to have it scrapped so that it can have that loud sound. So we collect this data, and from what we have already discovered through this project, the T-Trend project, vehicles that are running on bad roads are emitting higher than the vehicles that are running on the good roads. The reason being, the unpaved roads, the dusty roads, which are the majority, they have this tendency of compromising the fuel and air ratios. So this, you find that makes the vehicles consume even more than they would, and that means more emissions. And then since some of the systems are not working, like the cat converters are stolen, they're not there, there is no treatment of these afterburn gases. So they are directly emitted to the environment. So you find that this vehicle kind of emits more than 5 times it will be emitting when it was in the exporting country. So this is kind of the data we are collecting. And then using this same data to a kind of engage policy, like showing them that these vehicles are not safe and this is how they are different from how they were in the exporting countries. We need to do something. So we are trying to kind of quantify how much emissions are coming out of these vehicles while in Africa. And then using the same data to engage the mechanics to understand what should be done to at least keep these emission and safety control systems working properly if they understand the right procedures of repair and maintenance. Like I said, most of them, we did the engagement with them. We started with what we call the focus group discussions. And the aim of this was to fully understand what they already know about, the vehicle safety and emissions, and then to understand if they have any concerns. But then from the focus group discussions, we realized most of them have no idea that even there are systems that are in vehicles that are supposed to counter emissions. And you find that many of them, their mindsets are changing. It's not something we can measure impact right now, but at least slowly, they are learning, because we mapped out about 50,000 mechanics within the Kampala metropolitan, and we have so far trained slightly over 1,000. So there's a lot of work to do.
Let me just ask here. So there are 2 main issues for you here, if I understand correctly. One is also to really also raise awareness of actually the functioners of a catalytic converter. The second is really about also training also the mechanics and informing also the mechanics, and getting in fact also from the 1,000 to the 50,000. So what's your plan? What needs to be done to make that happen?
So what we are doing, since it's just in its early stages, we are engaging the mechanics, but also government as well, because if they can adopt this and set up a system that can scale it up, because as a small organization, we cannot do much. So we are kind of bridging that gap. If the government can take it on and set up a system that can fully regulate what the mechanics are doing. For instance, actually right now, we have already partnered with the Ministry of Works and Transport, and the registration of mechanics and garages is ongoing, but they haven't really come up with a system that does the monitoring. But at least for the early stages, they are getting to know what's really happening in the informal sector, because even the repair of vehicles and maintenance is still dominated by the informal sector. Just very, very few motorists can afford to go to the well-organized garages that are maybe attached to the vehicle dealerships and all that. So most of them can easily go to the roadside mechanic who doesn't have the tools, who doesn't have the proper equipment or even the knowledge. And you find that the complexity of modern vehicles necessitates for someone to have the proper skills and the tools, like they need to do specific repairs or maintenance. So what we do is that we try to make them catch up with the key issues, because many of them are smart. They can easily learn. They just need to be directed. So we give them guidance on what they need to consider while doing repairs. That is going to enhance safety and then keep the emissions contained. And this is where our governments need to look. They need to set up proper maintenance structures for vehicles while we look at even the electric ones, because it's not there going to be a quick shift. Like mechanics are going to just shift from, maintaining internal combustion engine vehicles to maintaining electric. Okay. Usually there has to be that kind of, that's why one of the part of the work we are doing a pilot on conversion of a vehicle from running on fuel to electric. So once this has succeeded, then we want to integrate this into our mechanics training, so that when we train them, we also introduce them to the aspect of electric mobility. Because where would they go is, let's say, if all fossil fuel vehicles are phased out, they'll be out of jobs. We would want them to still stay employed, but in a proper way. So we want that transition to happen, like kind of in a systematic way. Even though there are others that choose to specialize into electric mobility, but this is just at the starting point. So we need to be able to take care of what we have as we look at what is coming in.
Thanks, Michael, for sharing all your experiences you're having, and also the need also for bringing new knowledge also to some mechanics in the country, not just to save their jobs, but also to improve the jobs as well as to improve also then also the vehicles they work on. And we talked at the beginning quite a lot about also road safety, but you mentioned also in your work the importance also of emissions and tackling also emissions and the challenges around the converters. What is your take? My impression also from also policy, there is also more attention to also road safety in these days through also the high numbers. What about air pollution? Is that also gain also the same attention by the public and also policymakers? And is that something also which is sufficiently addressed?
I wouldn't say it is sufficiently addressed, but I'm happy that there are a number of efforts that are looking at it. So since transport is found to be one of the key pollution drivers, this is how we interconnect, because this project has really reached out far. It's doing work in more than 10 African cities. So air pollution as a whole is being addressed, and though there needs to be more awareness, because some people have misconceptions. Like air pollution is very easy to say that the air is polluted, but then where is the pollution coming from? Things have changed, but we're stuck with the old technology. So these are things we try to raise. I've seen, like in the UK, where is that the low emission, the ultra low emission zones, the ULEZ. So if we could copy such things, air pollution is really a big topic that we need to address. There are efforts that are doing this, through the city authorities, the Ministry of Works and Transport, but still there's more to do. So now this is where we come in, because now our specialty is in transport. So we need to see how can we work with them to reduce the pollution that is coming out of transport. And that's why we need these emissions data to at least create a case that this is how much this is, pollution is coming from our vehicles when they're here, and this is what we can do.
Before we actually coming also to closure, I want to pick up also on one thing you said earlier, so the role of international players and even as international NGOs. And you said, well, it's good to have more advocacy and more awareness around also road safety, but there is a need also for attention also to more work on the ground and to the need for more support for players like you. So can you expand a little bit on this thoughts?
I think, to put it simply, let's say you're a vehicle manufacturer. You're one of them, maybe Ford, Toyota or something. And then your vehicles, when they run for some time, they are sent here. Though it may not be your responsibility, but you partly own the problem, because these vehicles are causing us problems here. You made them. So if at least you could support us, we are the people that are trying to make sure that these vehicles are not as dangerous as they are, but we are struggling for support. It would be fair for international players like the vehicle manufacturers and maybe the related associations to support work like ours, because to be fair, this is a problem that is jointly owned because they make these vehicles. And also, I think they need to look at designing some of these vehicles because the standards in Africa are quite different, that we would want these vehicles to be designed with Africa in mind. So I think it would be fair if they really put in more effort to support. And then the international organizations, they also need to not look at the advocacy area only. When it comes to road safety, there's more attention on preventing the accidents from protecting the pedestrian, the road user, and also post-crash care. But the issue of how safe this vehicle has been given very minimal attention. So I think this is an area they really need to look at. I've also been following up on some projects by UNEP. There was that project where they were looking at safe and clean used vehicles for Africa. And one of the key recommendations was like, we need to consider going for low emission vehicles, the hybrids and vehicles with lower engine capacity and improved systems, which is good. But then also they need to support the development of proper maintenance structures for this, because if you don't have mechanics that can well maintain the hybrids, these hybrids will work for a short time and they'll become highly emitting after a short while. So we just need to look at the technical aspect of how these vehicles are maintained in Africa. So that's what I would say. They need to just not look at, how the vehicles, the newer vehicles coming in, how are they running, but also follow up on how are they being operated.
Thanks for sharing that, and thank you so much, Ursa, for taking your time today. Do you have any final words to share?
I would just say thank you to the HVT team and the FCDO for enabling us, because this is one of the very few agencies or programs that have looked at our work as a key strategy towards abating the emissions and then reducing the road crashes. We have sent out many calls, proposals, but some of them don't really see it as something that is tangible or potential of bringing about impact. So I'm really thankful to the HVT team and the partners, our partners that we're working with, locally, and it was the individuals. There have been very many people that have helped us in this. We have a long journey to go, but I'm really appreciative of those that have put in effort. So thank you very much. And the more we get support, that's the more we get the idea of how can we make this run better. So thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you'd like to find out more about the work of our guests and any of the resources, please check out the links in the description. I also encourage you to listen to the other episodes in the series. Also, you can leave us a rating, hopefully a good one, and a review. It really helps others find our podcast. If you'd like to learn more about the work of High Volume Transport, you can check out our website at transport-links.com, or follow us on Twitter at transport_links, or on LinkedIn at High Volume Transport Applied Research Program. The High Volume Transport Applied Research Program, HVT, is an £18 million investment by the UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO. The program's new body of research aims to help inform decisions of policymakers in low-income countries and make road and rail transport greener, safe, and more accessible and affordable. My name is Holger Dogman, and you have been listening to Reimagining Motion. Thank you, stay and travel safe wherever you are. Goodbye and auf Wiedersehen.